Okay, welcome to another one of our videos with myself and Sid, and we're joined today by Rachel, who's going to talk us through some of the things she's been doing at college to do with revision. So first of all, it's a new initiative we've been working on to do with revision at college. So Rachel, tell us a little bit about kind of why you decided to kind of focus on revision at college this year.
Okay, so originally the kind of revision strategy and revision culture that I would like to create at college came out of some research I was doing around assessment. So, tasked with the development of a new assessment strategy for college, I, as you do, started researching and became very interested in the revision aspect and the impact that can make on students' improvement in outcomes. Essentially, kind of that led me then down a different path, really. Alongside the assessment, it was kind of like these two come hand in hand. If we're going to improve student outcomes and we're going to have a new assessment strategy, actually what we need alongside that is a revision strategy and a revision culture with our students.
Yeah, I think one of the things that sort of occurred to me, kind of when you first brought it up, was the idea that I think sort of initially you always think of revision as something that you do like after you've finished teaching. And the kind of thing that occurred to me when you first sort of launched it was that a lot of it was to do with like planning, before you teach at the start of the year, thinking about what assessment's going to go into the year, planning out the assessment strategy and kind of putting all that in place before you teach as opposed to after you finish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the idea is that the revision is integrated for students throughout their 2 years of study. I think what we were finding is that study habits, students thought, oh, revision's something that comes at the end. This is what I do when I finish my course and I start preparing for exams. But actually what they should be doing is developing those revision materials throughout the 2 years and almost having a bank of resources that they come back to as their revision resources when they've finished completed their courses and they're ready to sit their exams. So the idea with the assessment strategy was to build those in throughout our college assessment points and encourage students and almost I say encourage, but make it mandatory. It becomes part of their course to produce these revision materials as they navigate the 2 years, and hopefully that improves their outcomes in their internal assessments throughout the 2 years, and then prepares them better for the end of year assessments and the external assessments.
Yeah.
Do you find that students know how to revise, or do you end up needing to share strategies with them?
I think they need to share. We need to teach students how to revise. They come here and often they may have even done quite well at GCSE without having done any revision, and that just doesn't work at A level. They might muster through the GCSEs, come out with reasonable grades. Some students may have even done better had they revised properly, but no one's really showed them. No one's really demonstrated what revision looks like, how to do a revision plan, the sort of tools and resources that they can use for revision, and I think that's something that we've started to do, is to actively incorporate these things into lessons as part of the assessment strategy, to encourage students to get going with this earlier, and to support what they're doing in class already.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is that it's because we're sort of a few assessments in now, and I think they've got used to that kind of consistency in the way it's being done. In all the subjects having a similar assessment plan, having materials to take into their college assessment points that are kind of consistent and similar. I think that's kind of nice for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we incorporated the revision spot checks for that, because the revision spot checks, so a member of the T&L team or a member of SLT going in and looking at what students are doing was to see, is this working? Are students actually starting to put this into practice? So it's not an observation of the teacher. It's an observation of, are our students buying into this? Are we creating the culture that we're setting out to do? And it's been absolutely incredible what we've seen. So we get a little report back every time someone's been checked, and students are really engaging with this, and we're seeing some great practice across all different subjects, which hopefully we can start sharing as well, and students are sharing and sharing all that different practice that's happening. So we're seeing this come to fruition, and we're seeing students really, sort of take part and get involved in this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've kind of found in computer science that I think the kids have really appreciated is being aware of what's coming, because I think in previous years it's always been this thing of like, in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, we're doing some unknown topic, and they're at the point now where they know that in 2 months' time it'll be the assessment on this, 3 months' time it'll be assessment on a specific topic, so they can almost prep and start looking ahead.
Yeah,
and it's something they never really had before, I think.
Absolutely, and it's that lead time, isn't it, to an assessment? Them realising that all of this takes longer than what they expect. So by us sort of pinpointing what they need to revise before an assessment, it takes away that overwhelm as well. So students can look, they've got a list of topics, they know what they've got to do, and it takes away that overwhelm of, I've got to revise absolutely everything, so I'm going to do nothing because I don't know where to start. And then hopefully if they're doing what's asked of them, and that they are improving their revision skills, they're doing better in their assessments, and they see that, they start to see the value of actually putting the time in, doing the revision, doing the practice questions, and the progress that they start to make.
Yeah, I mean, there was one thing that I remember when you first launched it at the start of the year, that I think people kind of were a little bit surprised by, was the little bits of frameworks that people could take into the first few assessments. So, for example, them having made, for example, maybe a mind map or some notes, actually be able to take it into the test. And I think people were quite confused at first by the idea of actually taking materials into a test.
Yeah.
But I think they've actually found it very helpful, because it's kind of put a bit more value onto actually having to do some revision, because they see the benefit of making something they can actually take in and use.
Absolutely, and I think that preparation, it encourages that preparation, because again they see the value, I can take it in. But ultimately, when students first come here and they're on the first year of their A-level course, that can be overwhelming in itself, and the level of assessment. So it's about building confidence. I've revised the material, I've got some material in front of me, I can attempt a really good answer because I know what a good answer should look like, perhaps if there's an essay scaffold available, or if there's some key terms they can take in. So it's about building their confidence as well. So they're coming in, they're not expected to achieve an A grade on material that they're going to be examined on in 2 years' time, or in the type of questions that we'll see in 2 years' time, but they're getting some support to do that. So they can see what it's going to look like, but they've got a little bit of a help or a little bit of an anchor in those first few assessments.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've recently kind of been collating from heads of department, kind of what they feel is like the best practice in terms of what they've given the students in terms of scaffolds for revision or work for revision. And I think some of the most interesting ones that I've had back from HODs haven't been sort of the curriculum-based ones, but actually tools that they've given students to actually plan out the revision in terms of actually timetabling. And I think it's perhaps something that we don't kind of value enough, is literally getting the kids to consider, I'm going to do this here, then that, and actually planning the time out.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, they sometimes they don't realise just how much time they've got, do they? They're in college, but they've got holidays. And again, it's, we've done sort of initiatives this time to launch revision before holidays, how to best use your time during the holidays. And, I think my students have thought I've been a bit harsh when I've said, there's 24 hours in the day, 8 hours revision, 8 hours sleep, 8 hours of you time. When you break it up like that, they've actually got a lot of time, haven't they? And even though they might not do that every day, we're not expecting them to do that every day. They need a break, like we need a break. It's about thinking about, actually, I've got quite a lot of time here. If I plan it out and I think about how to utilise all of those hours, I can still have a nice holiday and a break, as well as incorporate that revision time in. So, and there's been some great initiatives around this, with Kirsty supporting in Study Plus, and sitting with students and actually doing those revision plans and thinking about the time. And I just think, again, not all students have somebody to go home to who's going to support that at home as well. So if we can do that here, and we can send them off with a plan for the holiday, and we can keep them, going during the holiday in terms of going over topics, doing some good revision, so they come back and they're ready for an assessment, as well as that long-term preparation, then that's just great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of really interesting things coming back in from people. But yeah, so sort of closing thoughts for it. I mean, obviously yourself and all the members of the TNL team will have seen lots of things around college. Any sort of things that really stood out as kind of best practice that you think you kind of want to share?
Gosh, I mean, you get a real variability, don't you, in students and what they will produce. So I think where departments have really taken this on board and provided structure for it. So they're providing, enhanced lists for students. They're telling students exactly, how to revise. They're modelling that revision in class. Maybe doing some sessions where they model an approach, and then you can see students who've got organised files. I think we've seen that in some areas, and it's working really, really well.
I think you're right. That structure and that scaffolding is really important, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
One of the things I was going to ask you about was, are there any common pitfalls of revision? So types of revision that students might do. They might do a lot of revision and then not direct it in the right way.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've noticed is it's that passive and active, isn't it, revision? And what we really need to promote in students is just moving away from just reading through past notes and just producing, cards, just hundreds and hundreds of written out material that they've read and just copied out. We know that doesn't work. So it's those active revision techniques where and variation as well. I always say to students, 20 minutes on something, move on to something else, because once they click into passive mode, they're not revising anymore. But I think that's been the big gain with this is I think students are moving away from that, and they're really realising actually just reading through notes from class isn't enough. I need to use all my different senses, watching something, listening to something, making notes, and it's great to hear when students are even listening to podcasts, aren't they, on the way home on the bus. How fantastic is that? So I think it's utilising all the different resources that are really active.
I think students can find it quite enjoyable, can't they?
Yeah.
If they find the right methods, and it is that variety, isn't it? Podcasts are really popular now, aren't they? And I know that we've talked about Google LM. I don't know if you've used that, Google Notebook. It is amazing. You can put PDFs in there, Word documents, and it'll turn the information into a podcast for students to listen to. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really useful as well if we can show students how they might enjoy revising as well. Because we want them to enjoy it, don't we? So they do more of it and they find it rewarding. And obviously they're doing this for a whole year until they see the result, aren't they? So it's keeping them motivated as well. And that's one of the things that I find challenging when they do lots of revision and then they don't find a good reward from it, or that it's paid off in a good mark. They lose confidence. So it's keeping them going, isn't it, a lot of the time?
Absolutely.
I do think they really are sort of starting to see the value of it now. Now it's kind of bedded in for a few months.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that. And
thank you.
Thank you.